Hey you guys, I'm going to try something that I've kind of touched on before, but which I think could be really, really useful for everyone. I mean, who's trying to build their rating, trying to improve, and obviously that's all of us. But obviously the focus of this channel is helping beginners and improving players to get above 700, 800, 900, up to hopefully, wherever I'm at 1500 right now. So what I thought we'd do is I've just picked out 3 games that people have sent me to look at, and I think one of the most useful things for me is when you can look at the difference between how player A chooses their moves versus a slightly more experienced player. Okay, so I'm going to go through these 3 games, and I will give my reading of the board in each situation. Now, I haven't gone over these games, I haven't analysed them. Plus, I've hidden the moves, so I don't know what's coming next in each game, right? And so the first one is, in fact, because I'm in focus mode, we can't even see the ratings. So first one is the Monty 90, okay, who's rated, I think, in the 600s, as is their opponent. So it's only showing me Blitz ratings here, but both rated in the 600s in Blitz, and this is a Blitz game. So let's just dive in. Okay, so the Monty 90 is my buddy. We have e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, all very normal. The Italian game, bishop c4, knight to f6. Now, what this is doing is it's inviting the fried liver attack, which would come with knight to g5. There we go, knight to g5. And obviously the major threat here is either knight takes with a fork on queen and rook, or bishop takes with check, forcing the king to move here. There's no other option, okay? Now, there are ways to deal with this for black. One is to play this, okay? So pawn to d5 attacks the bishop and this pawn. And if bishop takes, you've got knight takes bishop. Pawn takes knight. This knight runs away. The attack is dissolved. Another one is the very, very sharp Traxler counterattack, where you mirror the bishop move, and normally a lot of lower rated players, the knight will come in. I think actually bishop takes is maybe the more threatening. I can't quite remember. But then with the Traxler, you capture here with check. If the king takes, you take this pawn with check, and it all gets super, super sharp, and people lose fingers. Okay, so what does black do? Okay, brilliant. d5. He knows what to do against the fried liver. And here we have e takes d5 and knight takes d5. Now, right now, it looks like black has resolved the threat, yeah? So we could trade bishop for knight at this point. Queen f3 is very aggressive. You could consider knight c3. You could also simply castle, right, and then get your rook onto the e1 square. But wow, look at that. Now, I didn't even consider that move, but obviously, actually, as the knight has just moved here, we have a discovered attack against the knight, so this knight's got to do something. Okay, so he could come here, he could come here, to relative safety. But here, white has gone in with a sacrifice, a knight sacrifice on f7, with a fork on queen and rook. So clearly black is going to have to capture with the king. And now, queen f3. Now queen f3. Okay, this is a fascinating line. Okay, so the king obviously can't go onto these squares. He has got 4 options, not that one. He's got 5 options, actually, where he can go. Blocking with the bishop is not an option. Blocking with the queen is an option. This knight, we have to remember, is pinned by the bishop. But if queen takes, you've got g takes, and that's kind of okay. So let's see what black does. Black now retreats to e8. But the other problem, of course, with this move is not only are we giving checkety check, check this out, 2 attackers on the knight. Okay, so white has traded their knight for a pawn, but actually if the king takes the knight, which is, I mean, if not, he's going to lose serious material. Queen f3 is a really nasty fork. All right, so king comes back here. That knight is going to fall. Bishop takes. Okay, I think that's the best move because it comes with the threat of queen f7. Boom, checkmate. Right. Also, there's no option for the queen to trade off here. If on the previous move, if queen had taken, then black has the option to trade queens and live to fight another day. Right. But no, bishop takes, best move. And now what does black do? Now what can black do? Black has to stop queen f7. Okay, so one thought is like queen e7, that would do it. Because queen comes here, trade queens, lose the bishop. Black trips over his own feet here and decides, you know, he's looking only at his own moves and he's forgotten the first 2 rules of chess club. Yeah? He's come on an attack. Aha, I'm attacking your queen and I'm attacking c2 with a fork on the king and the rook that can't move. Haha, aren't I clever? No, you're not. You lose. Boom. Good game. Good game. So, you know, that was a that's just a boom of a game, really. That's not a how did I lose this or how could I have played better. That was just an arse kicking at the 600 to 700 level. Very much enjoyed it. Let's flip over to game 2. Okay, and here we have, this is a 10-minute rapid game, and Frodo Swaggins from the US, chess while Sam carries me to Mordor, and Frodo is rated 1238. His opponent is Super Hans 2 from Scotland, rated 1211. Let's go. d4, d5, bishop to f4. We know where this is going. Welcome to London. Okay, knight c6. Knight's attacking this pawn, queen's defending. No worries. Okay, knight to c3. So this is the Jabava London approach, popularized by Grandmaster Simon Williams. And the idea is that in the normal boring old London system, the knight comes to d2 in front of the queen, which is a big yawn, right? But here, the knight comes out there, and maybe looking there, and maybe might jump in here. Look, supported by his buddy, the dark squared bishop, right? So it's a more aggressive approach to the London. And Simon Williams has got, I think, a couple of courses on the Jabava London system, right? If you want to go super, super deep into the theory. Okay, we have knight f6 from black, overprotecting this d5 pawn, which is attacked once, now defended twice. And this is aggressive, okay? Now, we're breaking an opening principle here because we're moving a piece that's already developed a second time. But it's coming with a serious threat. It's coming with a threat of knight takes c7, check. There's only 2 legal moves. Queen takes, in which case the queen falls, or king moves to d7, forfeits castling rights. So, what can black do in this instance? Has to defend this, and this knight can't defend it because it can't go to either of these 2 squares. This knight can't defend it, the bishop can't defend it, it's the wrong colour, rook can't do anything, this bishop's trapped in. So what does black do? Aha! So this is fascinating because this is like the flip side of the fried liver attack that we just saw, and of course e5. e5 is the move. Okay? If pawn takes, the threat is gone because the bishop's now blocked by the pawn. If bishop takes, black has the option of trading one of his knights for the bishop. We have pawn takes. Now, the pawn is attacking this knight. So, is the knight going to move? That would be aggressive. That would be moving the knight forwards. There's no pins because there's another e-pawn there, so you can't pin the knight and prevent it from capturing. Black plays knight to e4. Okay, now this looks kind of front foot and aggressive, but this knight can easily be kicked away. I mean, f3 is a thought, but with f3, of course, you're opening up a line towards the king. Leave Freddie alone. Hey, teacher, leave Freddie alone. What the hey? Frodo, have you lost your mind? Ah, but no. That is a damn clever move. Damn clever move. Can you see why this is not as stupid as it might at first appear? Well, if queen takes queen, right? Look, this. That is a long knight's move, right? It's a long L. Okay, normal knight's move is this. This is a long knight's move, 1, 2, 3, 4 L. Okay, now, when you've got two pieces in a long knight's move apart, look at that. So if queen takes queen, knight takes c7, family fork time. Go on, do you take? No, he doesn't take. Oh no, we love a family fork. Family fork is king, queen and rook. But no, he bottled it. Now, is there any other kind of idea here? Interestingly, look, as well, this brilliant move, because the queen is now attacking this knight as well. Right? So, what's Frodo going to do? You've got a check there, winning a pawn. If queen takes knight, queen takes knight. That's a thought. What would I play here? If there and queen takes as well, not only have you got queen takes here, you've also got e6 with a discovered attack on the queen. Wow. Okay, let's try and guess. What would Frodo do? I don't know. What's the bestest move? I mean, simply taking the knight isn't bad, but then black gets to capture inwards. So my money's on this. Okay, let's see what he does. No, okay, trades queens, and that's absolutely fine, because now there is only one legal move for black, which is king takes queen, and now I'm reckoning long castles straight into check. No, why not? Okay, rook d1, similar result, okay, and the king is in check, and the king can't stay on the d file unless blocks. Now the knight can't block because pawn takes, knight takes, bishop takes, rook takes, and it all falls down. You could block with the bishop. I think he's going to have to block with the bishop, isn't he? Yeah, he blocks with the bishop. Okay. Now, I don't know why Frodo didn't long castle there, because that does two things at once, and you should always be looking to achieve as many mini objectives with each move as you can. So, placing pieces on defended squares, defending undefended pieces, over-defending pieces, getting your king safe, developing pieces in the opening, lining up pieces against the target area on your opponent's side of the board. So, yeah, I mean, for me, isn't it better to have the king here, already safe? I don't know, maybe. Because now, right, Frodo can only castle kingside now, but both of his kingside minor pieces are still at home. So, I don't know. Arguable. Okay, now, knight back out. Okay, he's got to save his knight. And do we trade knights? We trade knights. And again, we're threatening this. So Frodo is up 2 pawns at this point in time. Plus, black's king has already been forced to move and therefore can no longer castle. Okay. This is kind of funky. Now, I get you can't castle as black here, right? Super hands. But Frodo can now capture the knight. If pawn takes bishop, rook takes pawn, and Frodo's just won another pawn. And then his rook's going to be here attacking that. So what does he do? He takes the knight, takes the pawn, takes the bishop, pawn takes bishop, rook takes pawn, and now this is ugly, right? So he's got two completely isolated pawns. Still, rooks are still at home. A bishop that's in danger of getting repinned very soon. This is not great for black. And of course this pawn is not there. This pawn is under immediate threat of capture. So, nice move, nice move. Okay, very common in endings particularly. Pair up a bishop and a pawn with a bishop in front of the pawn, so they're both defending each other, right? A kind of immovable object. Obviously the bishop is also looking at this guy. So I would probably b3, makes sense here. No, he either misses the threat or he ignores the threat, or he's thinking, well, let's let the bishop take the pawn and then I'm going to push b3 after that and the bishop can't get out. Well, the bishop can come here, but then maybe king here, king there, or even just king there, attacks the bishop. If the bishop retreats back here, you can get king here and maybe even win the bishop. So he takes b3. No. Okay. So Frodo's maybe thinking, look, I'm up in material here. I'm going to attack the bishop and put a second attacker on that and pretty much force the exchange. But I do think that b3 was an option. Frodo, let me know, did you consider that move? No, this is a really bad move. Okay, why is it a really bad move? Take a moment, pause if you need to. This is a blunder, I believe. Okay, so it's a counterattack, right? In this situation, we have tension between bishops, all right? So what this means for black is, his bishop is under threat. Now he could just simply trade bishops, that's okay, right? What he's doing is he's counter-attacking. He's saying, okay, you're looking at my bishop, but I'm attacking your rook. But white has a deadly response, which is rook d4, check, yeah? Then something has to change, and the bishop can't block because the bishop's over here, right? So let's move the bishop back, right? Rook here, nothing can block the rook's check from here, right? So the king is going to have to move there, or there, and then the bishop falls. Boom, you found it, well done, my son. Okay, moves, and the bishop falls. Good night, bishop. Plus, what's more, white still has the option of knight f3 and castles if he wants the castle. Another option is like just simply king e2, move the knight, double up the rooks, even better maybe. Okay, we have no hands, no hands. Something I say a lot at rugby, by the way. No hands, hands away. When you're down in material, as Hans is down a knight and 2 pawns. He's down 5 pieces. You don't go trading, right? Okay. I'm sure Frodo is probably tempted to trade rooks here. Also get the king back on the open file. But we have this move, grab the pawn. All right, free stuff. Plus, yeah, if rook takes rook, you've got pawn takes, and we rebuild our pawn chain. Okay, and black has the dark squared bishop, so that could be problematic. Now do we trade? Yes, we do, sir. Okay, now, for me, at this point, I would say knight f3 and king e2 are the natural looking moves. That is also a thought. Again, putting the pawn behind the bishop, immovable objects, right? Totally immovable. King can't attack either. This bishop can't attack either because they're both on light coloured squares and this bishop's dark squares. He's ghosted from that. And the rook isn't going to attack either of these because he's going to lose material. Okay. This had not occurred to us, dude. Right? Movie reference for you. For all the movie buffs out there, okay? Now, we're attacking the pawn. The pawn is pinned also against the rook, so the pawn can't move out of danger, but that's okay. But simply king here, obviously, okay? And what black's doing here is he's keeping his king on the dark square because white, we have an opposite coloured bishop situation. So if black puts all of his junk on dark squares, then this bishop is ghosted. Can't do anything. It'll just pass through, right? Can't actually attack. Likewise, if white puts his stuff on light-coloured squares, this bishop is ghosted, right? So, king there. Now, what would I do as white? Well, I've got 2 pieces still in the box. I want to develop my knight, so I think knight f3. Knight f3, excellent. Attack of the bish, retreat of the bish, b5, and grab a pawn. Another pawn. It's all going horribly wrong for black. Okay, now c4. Okay. Knight d4. Yeah, this is quite interesting. See, previously, you always have to think, okay, if every time you move a pawn, you undefend 1 or 2 squares, right? 1 square if it's A or H pawn, 2 squares potentially if it's any of the others. So, with this, black has undefended these 2 squares and is now attacking these 2, right? But that allows the knight to come in. Knights love to be in the middle of the board, okay? And, I mean, this pawn maybe, but this pawn can just advance. If this pawn advances here, right, then, also, there's a threat here of a fork. Okay, so, good. Black notices the threat. And white now castles may be unnecessary, maybe, because the king is now in the corner of the board, but the king really wants to get into the centre as well in the endgame when the queens are off the board. So I think king e2 and just move the rook. Yeah, it's 2 moves, but still, to centralise your rook, and your king is actually then behind in terms of his progress into the action area. So here we go, b4. e6 is push, and that's a good move. I like this move. Okay, it's now defended by the knight, plus it's ghosted from the bishop because it's on a light square, whereas the bishop's on a dark square. Bishop comes here attacking the knight, and if I was white right now, I think probably rook d1. Okay, now if black wants to trade his high-speed, long-range bishop for a sluggish knight at this point, I would say thank you very much, I accept. Okay, so what does Frodo do? Frodo moves and attacks the bishop in return, okay, and loses a pawn. So maybe not ideal there. That was kind of unnecessary. Ooh, but now e7. And that's pretty much going to force this move. But then if that move... So yeah, Frodo, I get you. I get you, mate. I get it. And that attacks the rook, yeah? So, okay, so he moves out of the way and says, all right, then go ahead and queen. But white can reinforce this queening square once, twice at least, right? So there you go, bishop g6, reinforce the queening square, trade. Yeah, I think this is going to be too slow. It's too late for black, right? Even if he gets a queen here, I don't know. What's going to happen? What would I do? Can the knight stop the pawn? Knight, double attack. That's what I would do. So knight either here or here, coming to e2, adding a second defender to that square. But no. Okay, first we queen. Takes. But now, we've lost time, because now it's black's turn, right? So now we can't stop that, because we can't get the knight to this square, because it takes too many moves. Okay, so he counters, and it's all getting kind of hairy now, because at any time black can play pawn c1 equals queen, rook must take, bishop takes, and white has basically traded his rook for a pawn, which isn't ideal. I mean, white should still be in a winning position, particularly since Harry is on his merry way. Off goes Harry. King comes in, so he's looking to take out this pawn. Is that the idea? Knight comes in, yeah, attacking the pawn, which is pretty much going to force pawn to advance here. But that is actually the end of the game, and it may be that black resigned at this point. Very good game though, very interesting one. So, if you're in the kind of 1000, 1100 area, this is a game to focus on. Okay, let's move on to game number 3. And this is with two of my buddies and two people that I've helped to coach in the past. So we've got OT Milker, that's Ed, rated 833. And we have Christina, Tigers Without Stripes, rated 1421. Now, Ed and Christina are buddies, and here we have either a 15-minute or a 15 plus 10. So let's see. So Ed's got the white pieces and starts with D4. I think we all know where this is going. And Christina plays F5. Now I don't even know what this is. Is this the Dutch? This is the Dutch, right? Yeah, and I used to play the Dutch a bit. So, okay, London style, Oppa London style. Bishop F4, Knight F6, E3. So now we might be getting. Is it the Leningrad Dutch that I used to play? So here, bishop here, castles. Yeah. Let's see. Yes, I think this is Leningrad Dutch with G6. Now this is going to get spicy. Okay, normal London this time, right? So the C3 move reinforces the pyramid of power, okay? But at the same time it takes away this square from this knight. So the knight's going to probably end up going to D2, right? Where it's playing a defensive role, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, there we go. Bishop Fianchetto on G7, and now H3. And the idea of that is it's a prophylactic move. Now I know that Ed's style is that he has a tendency to be defensive, very defensive. Christina, on the other hand, is a Valkyrie. You know, Christina loves to attack. So this is going to be fascinating, but not just because of the massive difference in rating. Okay, Christina now plays D6. Okay, so in the Dutch, I mean, she ought to be castling as well, sometime very soon. In the Dutch, this is going to be a key move. E5, if you can get it, okay? But right now, E5 would only be defended by one piece, but attacked by two. So it's not playable yet. You could play knight here or here, also defending E5, right? And now Queen C2. And I find this a little peculiar, right? Partly because this diagonal is clogged up with light squared pawns, right? So not likely to, you know, the queen's not going to have any action down there. Why not Queen B3? Queen B3 guards G8 and stops black from castling. Ed, maybe? Suggestion, my friend. Okay, now Christina now castles, okay, which was her plan all along. So I do think that the queen here would have been kind of prophylactic as well. You're halting your opponent's plans, and that's something that better players do a lot more than lower rated players. Okay, now if I'm white, I'm thinking knight D2 looks very good. Maybe castle long and launch an attack up the king side. Don't know if that's Ed's style. Bishop C4 is a thought. Might prompt D5 though. Then you could maybe drop the bishop back, or I don't know. Also knight F3 is very natural. Okay, so we have knight D2. Good, that's the first thing I thought of. And now E6. E6. You know, it's interesting because I think black's going to want to play E5 at some point. So E6 seems to be possibly a lost tempo. Why not knight C6, defending this square? Yeah, and then E5. That would seem to make more sense to me. Okay, so white castles, and we have ourselves an opposite side castling game. This could get spicy. Let's go. Now Queen E7. Okay, so Queen E7 is adding more firepower to the E file. Okay, you can also play Rook E8, adding yet more to prepare the E5 push. But even so, I don't see any point in the E6 in between. Okay, and now it looks like Ed is preparing g4, wanting to bust open black's position. Okay, so that seems to make sense. I think he would have liked to have played f4, but the bishop's in the way. You know, that's the way it goes with the London. Could have put the bishop here and pinned this knight, that's the thought, pin the knight against the queen, then play f4 and then put the knight behind the pawn, where the knight can now come into there. Because you see, because Christina's got a bunch of pawns on light coloured squares, that means the dark squares on the king's side are more vulnerable. She has less control over the dark squares, because she's got pawns guarding all these. All that stuff is guarded by pawns, yeah? But none of these squares are guarded by pawns. None of them, not one of them. This one, right? Because she's got a dark square pawn, and that's the way it goes with pawns. Pawn can either be on a light square or a dark square. Therefore, it's either guarding light squares or dark squares, not both. Okay, so Christina plays knight d7. Okay, and now she's lining up her whole army. I'm hoping for e5, and here comes Ed. Offensive Ed. Nice to see. Now, this pawn can't do nothing because it can't progress because the bishop's in the way. So what does Christina do? Slight counterattack. Okay, good to see. So there is e5. Finally e5. So I'm thinking maybe d takes e5 now. Pawn takes e5. No. Okay, so now the bishop comes here and pins the knight, like we said. Fair enough. And now c5. Okay. Now she's getting aggressive. I think I'd probably d takes e5 again. Seems to make sense. Yeah, it's attacking the knight. The knight is pinned. Now, Christina does have 1, 2, even 3 options because Ed has very little control now over this square. Okay, and you can see it's really interesting when you watch videos from stronger players. They talk a lot more about the control of squares. That's what the game is very much more about, positionally, right? Lower rated players tend not to think too much about the control of particular squares on the board and tend to think much more in terms of short range tactics. Okay. So bishop here, kind of attacking that knight. Bishop here with check might have been a thought as well. Okay, now we have a trade of pawns in the middle. Okay, now clearly, you know, Ed's not going to want to capture with the c pawn and leave his queen and king on the same file with no pawn there. Having said that, this bishop isn't going anywhere in a hurry. So, takes, and now Ed trades the bishop for the knight. Yeah, I'm not totally convinced of that move. I still think maybe here, and just keep the bishop safe and keep the bishop lined up with that corner of the board. Bishop takes, and what are we going to do? We're going to have to take the pawn. I think take the pawn, and then get the king out of line of fire. No, Ed decides to trade off his other bishop for Christina's other knight. That's going to leave Ed with 2 knights against 2 bishops. And if Christina can then open the board right up, that's going to favour the bishops. Okay, so queen takes, and now we are looking at a bit of a barrage on this diagonal here. So if black can take here and pawn takes, you've got queen takes, bishop takes, and this king is peeled right open. That's a decent move. Knight east e2, but finally Ed's completing development. Okay, but it's taken a lot of moves to do that. Now if pawn takes, he's got more firepower, and that is a good square for the knight to be on. Pawn takes, knight takes. Good. Now, who would I rather be in this situation? I mean, Ed has the opportunity here to trade pawns. Christina might preempt that and avoid it by pushing, maybe pushing all 3 pawns up. But for me, also it has to be noted Christina's got an extra pawn. Dave. She's got a Dave. Ed's got no Dave. I think I would be black. I mean, particularly with the extra pawn, yeah, but also because of the bishop pair in the ending. Okay, rook comes here, pinning the knight. Ouch. Okay, knight b1 is a thought, adding a third defender to the knight. Probably my first thought. Maybe also think about trading pawns here, but actually pawn takes, bishop takes, attacking the queen. Queen here, check. Wins a pawn. Okay, so Ed spots that queen check and the fork first. All right, so bishop blocks. Okay, but Ed, you could have just grabbed the pawn here as well, remember? That's what I thought his plan was. But he has this and another queen fork onto undefended pawns. This pawn pushes. Again, Ed doesn't grab the undefended pawn, right? Now, one thing you always have to be careful about is, you know, when there's a queen here, if this bishop here could move with check, you can lose your queen, right? Because you have to respond to the check, and then queen takes queen. That bishop doesn't have a check. So Ed is maybe falling for his kind of, you know, tendency to timidness, maybe. But, you know, again, there's a hanging pawn, but king b1. Okay, yet there's an argument getting the king out of the line of fire of the rook, getting him off the open file. Rook comes in, now defending this pawn. Christina's spotted the hanging pawn. Don't know if Ed did. Knight b3. And now it's looking like Ed is going, you know, turtle style, crawling into his shell, which might frustrate Christina. Here. Now, one thing Ed does have here is an attack on the queen. Might force a trade of bishop for knight, which would then remove the bishop pair. Don't know. Another thing I would definitely be considering is centering the rook, but also, you know, using these pawns. You've got an opposite side casting situation. Pawn storm is the name of the game. However, we would be opening up the board. However, Ed's king's over this side, so opening up this side of the board, maybe not a bad thing. Okay, so he's gone for a different kind of attack, a fork on bishop and rook. Kind of like that. That's one way of going about things. That pretty much forces the trade of bishops. So that's not the move I saw, right? Okay, she moves her rook down and we trade off. Okay, so now this is good. I like this, right? So what Ed has done now is he's forced Christina to give up the bishop pair. Okay, rook e1 attacks the queen with tempo. Queen retreats to here. Ed, I spy with my little eye something beginning with overwhelm. Do we do it? Rook takes d6? Winning your pawn back? No! But he's spotted something. Boom, 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 pew, pew. Christina's not going to miss that threat. No, of course she's not. So she's proposing a trade of queens. Now, if black takes queen on a3, pawn takes, that's bad for this king. So Ed's not going to allow that to happen. Queen is attacking this, but it's defended by rook, so it's not an issue. Okay, so Ed's got a couple of options. Queen could go here. Queen could maybe go here. If he wants to avoid the trade, what's he do? No, he trades. And pawn takes. Okay, so this is interesting because this is the case of a pawn moving, capturing outwards, but it's moving towards this king, right? So now this pawn can advance up the board and try and bust open white's king position. Now then. There's a couple of attacks here. He's got a check there. He's got knight here attacking this rook as well. Is the check meaningful? Because the king can either move into the corner or can start to move towards the centre of the board. And you don't really want to prompt your opponents to move their king, to start centering their king, unless you have to. Okay, so Ed plays quite sensibly knight back here. Now, this could drop a pawn. If Christina wants to capture the knight, pawn takes, rook takes, she's won a pawn, and this is under fire as well. So I'd consider that, although this is quite a tasty bishop, because it's looking all the way down at b2. I think there is a general reticence here on Ed's part not to capture material. Another option Ed might have at some point is a 7th rank rook, but we shall see how it goes. Okay, we have trader rooks. And now, now she grabs the pawn opportunity. So, situation, Christina is 2 pawns up, okay, in the ending, and is attacking this pawn. So the only way to defend is rook f1. Throws in a check, okay, but now rook f1 isn't on the cards, but as soon as the king moves, we've got rook d7 wins a pawn here. Don't know. There, rook d7. Okay, now Ed has a choice of pawns. Where's one? There's another. Which one does he go for? This one. Yeah, kind of makes sense. Okay, loses another pawn. Now here, no, Ed's missed an opportunity here. Rook takes h7, defends h3. Yeah, this is quite common in endings. Yeah, when you've got both rooks are behind the enemy's position, you want to be looking out for pawn captures that also defend your own pawns. So, but he throws in a check instead. Okay, so he's going after another pawn. There. I'd be tempted also maybe to capture there, I don't know. Maybe not. Yep, that's what Ed does. Pawn takes. And yeah, I think pawn takes makes sense. I mean, rook takes is an option, or even king takes, but pawn takes gives Christina a totally passed pawn. Okay, there we go. So pawn takes, Harry goes off, and Ed is still 2 pawns behind. Now, again, I think what I would have done here is rook to there, defending Harry and attacking Black Harry. Black Harry, the pirate, you see. Okay, but here, there, takes a pawn. Yeah, it might as well. Because if rook here or rook here attacking White Harry, we've still got rook h6, defending White Harry, attacking Black Harry, which still defends White Harry. Pawn push. Pins the pawn. Like it. But here, and White can't take, Black can take Harry, lose Charlie, so hey ho. Oh, great move by Christina. Right, discovered check. So, discovered attack on the bishop, on the rook. King can't go here to defend the rook because, oh, he can, but then king takes queen, but the rook falls. Christina has 10 minutes on the clock. Ed is down to just 6. Okay, does this one. Surely this is an error on Christina's part, because Christina had pawn c1 equals queen, check, forcing the king to take, and then rook takes, and she's up a rook in the ending, and it's all going to finish very badly for Edward. Now, okay, nice move, Ed. Nice move, brother. Okay. King here. What do we do? Do we capture here? Trade rooks? And then it's a dash to the line? Might even work. But this pawn is already 1 step in front of this pawn. However, the king's still got to get out of the way. So that's one way you just have to count it on your fingers and toes, really. Ed takes, rook takes c2, trade, and now we have a foot race. Okay, so Christina is planning on heading the a pawn off at the pass, in which case that leaves the way open for Ed's king to come and do this. Oh my goodness, but Ed's trying to defend the pawn. No, No, I don't think that's workable. Because as soon as, right, here we have the square, right? You draw a square, same number, same length on each side, okay? If this king steps out of this square, this pawn is unstoppable. So I think Ed's only options here are either send the king this way or send Andy off his way. This I don't like. And there goes the pawn. Okay, so now this is the square. 4, right? 4 squares on each side. And the king must re-enter this square now. Must. It doesn't. What? Okay, we have a queen. Oh my goodness. Check. Also forking Harry. Moves. Now surely this has to be an easy win now, because nothing can stop Black Harry. Check. Gives up the queen. Okay, let's... Right, Christina's got another 12 minutes on the clock. Ed's got 8 minutes. I think it's a 15 plus 10, yeah? Now, Christina's queen is a knight's move away from the king. Therefore, the king comes in. King goes in. Check. Here. Stalemate. Stalemate, Christina. Oh. No! But, good job, Ed. Good job on that. Obviously there were some mistakes, and it has to be said, Ed was one lucky bugger to get away with this. This ought to be winning all the way. Now, from here, Ed's only options are bring the king this way or send Andy up. I think send Andy up. Right? Now this is a really good one where you could go to this situation or rebuild it on the PGN analysis board and then go practice versus computer. Yeah, definitely an interesting one to play through here. I think Ed's only hope really is to try and take out this pawn, try and distract this king away, grab this pawn, then grab this pawn and try and get Harry safe. But should be winning for black. So let's just play this through a bit. King down, king here, pawn down, Andy goes. Check, block. And then the king has to stop Andy, right? There. And now, too late. Maybe it isn't. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. No. Can't go there, can't go there. Yeah. Maybe it's winning. That is an interesting endgame. Great games, guys. Well, 3 different games, 3 different levels. The last game, 2 very different levels. But yeah, big blunder from Christina as well on that one. Could have gone a rook up, and that would have led to an easy win. But maybe they were playing for fun. I don't know. But certainly very enjoyable. Hopefully very instructive. Hope it's been useful for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.